Okay, so so this is a evaluation. This integral is to be approximated, and this weighted sum, it is approximated by the accumulation of weighted sum of function values at points in the interior of this range of integration, domain of integration a to b.
So your
And
microphone is off, I guess.
oh, yeah, okay, fine. So this integral is approximated by accumulating these weighted sum of these functions with function values at discrete points amplified by certain weighting coefficient such that this weighted sum is as close as within the specified tolerance level to the analytical integral. And elementary graphical methods of computing areas of rectangle and trapezoid provide a good basis to start with, and that is what you were referring to as this weighting function wi being the width of the sampling point, interval between sampling points. So that's a very good starting point to understand the mechanics of these numerical quadrature. So rectangle and trapezoid rules, if you recall, if we have a function like this, and if we need to evaluate the integral of this function and between the range xi and xi plus 1, we would just rectangle rule says that we just evaluate it at the centroid of this interval, take the function value at that point and multiply by the width of this interval. So that's essentially the area of rectangle. So in doing so, what we are doing here is we oversample at certain regions and we undersample at certain points. So going by the principle of big data analysis, you lose some, you gain some, and in the bigger picture, these positive and negative uh, gains would be cancelled out, would average out, and you what you compute would be like close to what you actually have. And one level of degree higher is a trapezoid rule. So we try to find the value of the function at the endpoints instead of computing the value at the center of the interval. So we compute the value at the endpoints and then choose those endpoints as a interpolate that as a straight line and consider this as a trapezoid and find the area of the trapezoid as an approximation to area under the curve and in that interval. So again, the same concept applies. We are losing out this portion of the curve, but we are adding something in some other range. So if we do this very often, then and if the interval is small enough, then the chances are that these misses and these gains, they would average out, and your area under the area calculation is going to be uh, correct, close to the true value. So in this case, you will find that the function value is evaluated at the centroid, and the weighting coefficient is this delta x, what you call as delta x or h, whatever. Right. Similarly, here the function is evaluated at these 2 points, right? So the function is evaluated at these 2 points. Uh, yes, Charu, let me first finish this point, then you can ask. So function is evaluated at these 2 points, and the weighting function, weighting coefficient is going to be h by 2 uh, the interval between the two, and that's the area of the triangle, rule of the area of the triangle. Sum of the parallel sides and multiplied by half of the distance between them. So that's the trapezoid rule for you, and that can be formulated in the format that we wish, that is function value multiplied by the coefficient. And those coefficient in these particular cases are related to the width of the interval. Yes, Taro.
Sir, I was saying that we can fit any sort of curve apart from like rectangular or trapezoidal rules. There are many, like we can also fit the parabolic curve also.
Oh yes, of course you can.
Is this the same as that the Simpson's one-third rule that we have used in mathematics?
We will come to Simpson's one-third rule very soon. Just hold on.
Okay.
But
Okay.
what is done? I mean, you will at a little later in this course, when we discuss the numerical integration of uh, equation of motion, that is the ordinary differential equation in time dimension. There again, we will make use of these quadrature rules, right? And there we will see how it is worked out. But what you can see here, it is area under the curve. Particularly, I mean, it's very easy to visualize in one dimension, but similar concepts can be extended to two-dimensional and three-dimensional integrals. And what is actually done, I mean, you are not very off the mark, much off the mark. You know, we have computed this piecewise cubic Hermite interpolation, and piecewise cubic spline can also give a very good approximation to the function. So what is often done is you have a sampled function values or the gradients, approximation of the gradients, and you construct this polynomial interpolation, piecewise polynomial interpolation over different ranges. And once you have this piecewise polynomial interpolation, then you can analytically integrate those piecewise polynomial integration, right? And those analytical integrations can then be converted into this format. I mean, what is the function value at 2 points, and what is the weighting coefficient going to be. So that is how these different rules of quadrature are actually derived. Origins may be different. For example, if I try to fit a piecewise cubic interpolation polynomial, and obviously the coefficients of the polynomial will be dependent on the function values, and the gradient values can again be approximated by function values by using finite difference operations. So that piecewise polynomial that we can fit, they can be coefficients of those piecewise polynomial can be related to the specified function values, and the analytical integral of the that piecewise polynomial will again be we will end up with certain weighted summation of these function values at the nodes of interpolation. So this is how quadrature rules are actually derived. And as you said, Newton's Simpson one-third rule, it will be very interesting to know that Simpson one-third rule is obtained as a linear combination of these two rules. You just add the results of rectangle rule and trapezoid rules, and you get Newton's one-third rule. We will see how.
Okay, sir.
So rectangle rule, it's just the value of the function at centroid multiplied by the interval hi as the length of the interval, and xc is the midpoint of the interval. Then trapezoid rule, this integral is just the sum of function values at the endpoints of the interval, and multiplied by half of the distance between them, so half of the interval. So that's, again, if you see, it can be represented as sigma w, this is wi and fxi, and you add that to points. So how accurate are these rules? If you see, if the function was a straight line, then both rectangle rule and trapezoid rule will integrate that first degree polynomial exactly, right? Trapezoid rule would make some error in some part of the domain, and that will be compensated in other part of the domain, such that these positive and negative errors would cancel out, and you will evaluate the integral under the straight line first degree polynomial exactly by using trapezoid rule. And if we go to the next degree higher, so what about their performance, rectangle rule and trapezoid rule in integration of this quadratic function? So just x square in the range of 0 to 1, if you evaluate it, I mean, of course, this is a very simple integral, and you can evaluate it analytically, and that's a very nice way to assess the error in computation by using these simple rules, right? So if you error in integrating a quadratic by using trapezoid rule is twice that incurred by using a rectangle rule, but it is of opposite sign. You can work out. You can try to work out the integral, and you can try to find the value of the integral that you will obtain by using rectangle rule and the trapezoidal rule, uh, and compare it with the exact integral, and you will find that uh, the error that you incur in using the rectangle rule and in using trapezoid rule, both of them are in error, but the error is of opposite sign, and trapezoid rule, surprisingly, surprising because you actually make more effort in using trapezoid rule. There are two function evaluations, but the error incurred in trapezoid rule is two times that of rectangle rule, but they are of opposite sign, and therein lies the opportunity. The error is of opposite sign, and we know exactly what is the error, what is the magnitude of the error. So what we can do is we can have a weighted summation of these two rules, these two results, uh, rectangle rule estimate and trapezoid rule estimate, and then add them in the ratio of 2:1, and you can cancel out this error, and the same result can now integrate polynomials of second degree exactly. So first degree polynomial, of course, they can integrate exactly, constant term they can integrate exactly, but now if we combine them appropriately, then the second degree polynomial can also be integrated exactly, and that's what Simpson's rule is. So Simpson's rule is derived from this observation and eliminating the error by suitable combination of the rectangle and trapezoid rules. So we just add 2/3 times rectangle rule plus 1/3 times trapezoid rule, and we add them, and you get the familiar structure of Simpson 1/3 rule. This is what you recognize, don't you? This h by 6 multiplied by f of x multiplied by 4 times f2 multiplied by plus f3, right? So this expression is obtained by combination, linear combination of rectangle rule and uh, trapezoid rule, realizing that the errors in these two estimates in integrating a second degree term are of opposite sign and in a constant ratio. And just as I was saying, Newton Cotes formula for integration is based on integration of Lagrange interpolation polynomial passing through the ordered data pair. So we have these data points, we just fit a polynomial, and once we have this polynomial, I mean these function values are of course there. So this Lagrange interpolation, this is constant. So this integral is only a matter of evaluation this Lagrange interpolation polynomial corresponding to each point, and this integral then becomes our weighting coefficient for that particular point or data point function value at xi, right? So again, if I integrate this, then this becomes a constant value, and this summation reduces to our standard format of numerical quadrature, that is wi fxi. So and similarly, what I was saying, I mean, if polynomial interpolation can be used for numerical quadrature, then cubic splines should be able to do a better job for quadrature, because they try to approximate the functions very closely. It has a very, I mean, continuity of second order derivative, so it follows the function variation very closely. So again, the idea is the coefficients of these cubic splines. I mean, cubic splines, although they are splines, but at the end of the day, they are still polynomials. They are cubic polynomials, and cubic polynomials will have 4 number of coefficients, and those 4 coefficients are related to the sampling points and the function values and derivative values at the sampling points. So we can derive cubic splines at different intervals and then integrate the cubic splines analytically and use those coefficients for deriving our quadrature rules, appropriate quadrature rules. So construct suitable cubic spline approximations over small intervals and then integrate these cubic polynomials analytically, and you get the weighting coefficients. And this is particularly attractive for integrating functions which are available only as a set of discrete samples. So if the function is not known analytically, but we only have the sample values at discrete points, so then it's very convenient to just fit a spline interpolation in between different data segments. So this interval A to B is divided into several subintervals, and within each subinterval I fit a spline, cubic spline polynomial approximation, and integrate it analytically within the, I mean, cubic function is very well defined. Integral of cubic function is can be analytically evaluated knowing the coefficients of the polynomial. So that is a very convenient way of integrating functions, uh, numerical quadrature of a function which is defined only by a set of discrete sampled values. Now we come to a very popular family of quadrature rules, and in finite element applications we will heavily rely on this Gauss-Legendre quadrature, because you will see that uh, function evaluation is the most expensive operation in numerical quadrature. The function can be very complex function, and that may involve many numerical, many floating point operations to find one value of the integrand at a given sample point. So this function evaluation is the most expensive operation, and obviously we should try to keep it minimum for not just for the sake of efficiency, but also for the sake of accuracy, because large number of function evaluations or large number of floating point operations are potentially incurring more and more round of errors. So it is possible to determine an optimal combination of function sampling locations and the corresponding weighting coefficient to achieve maximum accuracy. See, so far we had the liberty to choose the sampling points. I could choose, I mean, unless the function was specified as a discrete values of points, then of course we do not have any choice, and cubic spline, that's where we use cubic spline for deriving the interpolation over sub ranges and then analytically integrating it. But if I have a function and I just need to sample it at different points, then until this point we have not imposed any constraint on the location of the sampling. We could choose anything that we wished. So again, the normal tendency is to have uniform sampling points, and just take the function evaluation as those sampling points and add them suitably, so that we can get a reasonably good idea of the area quadrature, definite integral that we are looking at. But if we sacrifice, if we give up this freedom to choose sampling point and let that come as a result of some optimal search, optimality search criteria, that what is the most efficient way of function evaluation for maximum accuracy. So that will provide me, I mean, I can define the problem in such a way that the result would be returned as what should be the best sampling location and what should be the weighting coefficient corresponding to that sampling location, to find out the integral exactly to the highest degree of precision possible with minimum number of samplings, minimum number of function evaluations. So that is what we have as Gauss-Legendre quadrature. And if you recall our discussion on interpolation, we found that the non-uniform sampling can often lead to a better representation of the function. At that time we talked about roots of Chebyshev polynomials, and that is a very good source, very good direction for the choice of sampling points. Similarly, for these quadrature rules, if we, I mean, it so turns out that roots of Legendre polynomials form a very good or the optimal locations for evaluation of the functions by using Gauss quadrature, right? So sampling point locations correspond to the roots of orthogonal Legendre polynomials of required degree. And a polynomial, because now both of them are left free, the weighting coefficient and the sampling point. So again, going by the same reason, one point we have two conditions. So at n number of points, n number of sampling points, we have 2n conditions, right? So at 2n, with the help of 2n conditions, I can actually define exactly a polynomial of 2n minus 1 degree. And if I can use those conditions, then if I can define 2n minus 1 degree polynomial, then obviously analytically I can integrate it exactly. So that is what is the basis of Gauss-Legendre quadrature. And it is standardized in the range of -1 to +1. So outside this range, we can just linearly map the coordinates. So by change of coordinates, linear transformation. So any integral in the range of -1 to +1 is represented as, again, sum of weighted sample values. So there are sampling points xi I, and there are associated weights corresponding to those sampling points. And if I sample it at one point, then a polynomial of 2n minus 1 degree can be exactly integrated. So for 1 point quadrature, I can integrate it exactly. First degree polynomial, up to first degree polynomial can be exactly integrated. If I sample this function at 2 points, then n is equal to 2, and with 2 points I can exactly integrate a cubic degree polynomial, third degree polynomial. A cubic polynomial can be integrated exactly by just 2 samples, right? And similarly, if I choose 3 sample values, then I can integrate a fifth degree polynomial exactly, up to fifth degree. All lower degree polynomials can of course be integrated exactly, but polynomial terms up to fifth degree can be integrated exactly if I choose 3-point Gauss quadrature rule, Gauss-Legendre quadrature. For use with arbitrary limits, as I said, a linear transformation of the variable of integration is required, so that integral of fx between a to b is equal to integral of f xi d xi in the range of -1 to +1, and x is mapped to xi by this change of relations. I mean, a is mapped onto point minus 1, b is mapped onto uh, xi is equal to +1. So that is the mapping relationship. So that's a standard linear transformation. And with that transformation, we can evaluate the integrals under the curve, and very efficiently. So now what are the weighting coefficients and the sampling points? You will find these table of values in almost every book on numerical methods or numerical analysis will provide these rules, and for up to 5 order rule, these are the sampling points. So for one function evaluation, sampling point is at the midpoint, and weight is 2. For 2 function evaluation, sampling points are plus or minus 1 by root 2, square root of 1 by 3. So 1 by root 3 plus or minus 1 by root 3, and weights are 1. And similarly for different function, different orders. So we rarely need to go beyond third order of integration. I mean, for finite elements, we do not, we will see very soon, we will be using lower degree polynomial approximation. We have seen virtues of lower degree polynomial approximation over small ranges, and we will stick to that. And for lower degree polynomial approximation, we don't really need to go for very high degree of Gauss-Legendre quadrature. Yes? Yes, Charu?
Sir, in the previous slide,
Yeah?
please,
Okay.
there you have mentioned x is. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Here at the bottom,
Yes.
x equals to b minus a by 2 xi plus b plus a by 2.
Yes.
Sir, how do we get this value, like x could be this?
I mean, it's a linear transformation. So you just have to define x is equal to, let's say, C0 plus C1 xi. And you need to find out what is C0 and C1. Right? And you have the two end conditions. A should be mapped to, x is equal to A should be mapped to xi is equal to minus 1. So just say you get one equation as a is equal to c0 plus minus c1, because xi is equal to minus 1, right?
Okay.
And second equation would be b is equal to c0 plus c1, because xi is equal to plus 1. So using these two you can get the coefficients c0 and c1, and that is what you have here,
Okay, sir.
right? So let me try to explain that. So what I am trying to say here is x is equal to c0 plus c1 xi, and a is to be mapped to c1 multiplied by minus 1, xi is equal to minus 1. So this is equal to c0 minus c1. And similarly b is to be mapped to c0 plus c1 multiplied by plus 1. So this is equal to c0 plus c1. So that gives me what is c0 plus c0 is simply a plus b by 2. I add these two equations, I will get c0. I subtract the equations, I will get c1 as b minus a by 2. And that is what the relationship is. I defined x as b minus a by 2 xi plus b plus a by 2. That was what we had written there in the slide. Right?
Yes.
So we can evaluate the function values and add them, accumulate the sum, and we can get a very efficient evaluation of the integral. So now this is for the one dimension. How do I evaluate the integral for 2 dimensions or 3 dimensions? So it's just we extend this formula for 3 dimension, so it becomes a very simple, instead of one dimensional integral was a single summation, for 3 dimensional integral it becomes triple sum. So the summation would range from wi is the sampling point of xi corresponding to weighting coefficients corresponding to sampling point xi, wj is the weighting coefficient corresponding to sampling point for in the dimension y dimension, and wk is the sampling point in the z dimension. And theoretically I can use different orders of quadrature rules in different dimensions, but it is very weird and not, at least I have not encountered so far. It's more, because we will have symmetric variation with respect to all coordinate directions, so the powers of the polynomial terms that we will have would be all of similar degrees. So it makes sense to have same order of quadrature in all dimensions. But it may differ for a general case. There may be different degrees of polynomial variation in different dimensions. And if that is so, then there can be different orders of integration in different coordinate directions. But eventually it is just, it works exactly same way. We sample it at different points, and it is going to be just for a constant value of x, we sample across values of y, and for constant value of x and combination of x and y, we exhaust all possibilities of z, and so on. So for xi held constant, I will look at all possible values of yj for y coordinate sampling points, and for a combination of xi and yj, I will look at what all the possible function values of z are, and accordingly I will accumulate the summation. And that's how the inner sum is exhausted first, then we come to the second summation, and then the last summation. So that's how the terms are included, and this is very easily, I mean, if you look at in terms of programming uh, structure, this triple sum is essentially nested do loops or nested for loops. There are 3 for loops here essentially to accumulate this summation. So that's all for the discussion today. Any questions?
Sir, these weights are also dependent on each other.
These weights, I mean, Gauss quadrature is defined for -1 to +1. So those are weights are only dependent on the specific coordinate, the function value, where the function is to be evaluated, as shown in this case. So whatever is the sampling point for what is the order of the function quadrature rule, that will define the sampling points that are required, and corresponding to those sampling points there will be weights. So for one point quadrature there is only one sampling point and the weight is 2. For 2-point quadrature rule, the sampling points are plus or minus 1 by root 3 and the weight is 1. For sampling point, I mean 3-point quadrature, the sampling points are 0 and plus or minus square root of 3 by 5, and the weights are 8 by 9 and 5 by 9, and so on. Right, and these are for standardized range from -1 to +1. So I mean this can go from all of them. We can have these for x dimension, x coordinate direction. We can have these similar sampling points and associated weights for y coordinate direction, and similar positioning and weights for z coordinate direction.
Okay, sir.
Right? Okay, so thank you. We will meet on Tuesday, 9 o'clock.